So today's video, we're going to be reviewing some TikToks. And they're technically not TikToks, they're on Instagram, but they're from this creator named, I think it's Justin Brearley. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but holy cow. I stumbled upon one of his TikToks. Somebody that I follow on Instagram reposted it, and it's just so bad. We're going to get into it. Let's start with this first one. It's titled, Can Science Explain Everything?
Can science explain everything? No. And here's why. I have a delicious cake. If I were a scientist, I could tell you a lot about it. Its chemical structure, the exact ratio of sugar, flour, milk and eggs, the physical properties of the baking process, and the neurological effects on me when I eat a slice. Science can explain a lot about this cake. But can science tell me why the cake is here? No. To answer that, you'd have to ask the person who made it.
So immediately we have this very classic idea that religion or religious perspectives can answer the why questions. Science is limited to the what or how questions. And this is just ridiculous to think that the word that you choose to put in front of your sentence, your question, dictates what area of expertise can answer that question. I'll use an example. You can say, why did the bread rise in the oven? That's a why question that can be absolutely answered by science. You can ask, why did that car accident happen? You can say, okay, well, the tire slipped on the road because it was icy. This car was traveling at this speed, which created that collision. That's a why question that can be answered by science. This video also assumes that the only person that can answer the why questions is the individual who's responsible for the existence of the scenario or the object. If you ask, why is this computer here? Right? Obviously, I will have an answer to that question, but according to his logic, I would have to ask like the creator of the computer why the computer's here in my desk. Let's take Steph Curry, for example, one of my favorite basketball players. I don't need to ask him, why did you shoot a three in a game, right? I know why he shot a three. He's trying to score points because he's playing a basketball game. This leads me into the last issue with this video, and is that science absolutely has the capacity to ask and answer why questions. And he misses this because he's operating on like a fourth grade understanding of what science is. When he thinks of science, and you can tell by the way he portrays it, he thinks of a chemist mixing things together. Like, yes, chemistry is one aspect of science, but there's other things like biology. But how about psychology specifically? In psychology, there are these things called questionnaires where people ask and answer these questions. You know, why is it that you feel this way? Why do you have this routine, for example? Why do you desire these specific things? These are why questions that can be answered. And he acts like it's not a scientific endeavor to ask the creator of the cake, why did you bake the cake? That is a scientific inquiry that the scientific method absolutely still applies to. I just don't, again, I think he's operating on this understanding of science that was like ingrained in him in kindergarten. It's ridiculous. Now we have another video here. I think this is the first video that I watched of his. It's called, What's the Monetary Value of Your Body? And this one is horrible. Okay, let's not let it play.
What's the monetary value of your body if you were stripped down to just your chemical elements?
Okay, first we already see he's got this like view of science, like, oh, chemistry, okay, whatever.
If you were stripped down to just your chemical elements, the oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, etc. that makes up your body. Well, scientifically, if you just calculate the value of those chemicals, then your body is worth about £125. That's about $170.
Right off the bat, he puts these constraints on the question. What is the specifically monetary value of specifically the chemicals that make up your body? He's framing this question in such a way that favors his message. So he gets the answer, oh, it's about $170 or whatever he said. But you can definitely frame the question any other way and have it, come out with a different result. For example, I could ask the question, what is the monetary value? We'll stick with that, of your parents' support in your life. Right? That's going to be a completely different value. It's not going to be $170. In fact, some people would argue that it's limitless, has limitless value. And here's another issue. I know he knows this. It's that we attribute value to things. The dollar doesn't have inherent value. Saying that somebody's worth $170 doesn't mean anything. And especially you think that the value of the dollar is going to change over time, right? 100 years ago, you asked the same question, it's going to have a different answer. 1,000 years from now, it's going to have a different answer. The question itself is just ridiculously stupid. And then you get, you run in these issues where the answer is also equally stupid.
Science is great for some things, but it isn't going to tell you what you're worth. So how can you know your worth? Well, Christianity claims that every human is made in the image of God.
Again, we see this issue where he has a preconceived idea of the limits of science, and then he just makes everything fit into that box. But in reality, science, depending on the way you frame this question, science or whatever is going to have a different answer. We see this similar issue as we saw with the previous TikTok or reel, whatever you want to call it, that he has a third grade understanding of what science is. Science can absolutely ask different questions other than, let me do chemistry and make monetary value of chemicals. It's just ridiculous. I truly can't believe that people are watching this and like it. It's just ridiculous to me. I'll get into that at the end of why I think this content is popular, but let's get into the next one.
Would you be willing to die for something you knew wasn't true? One significant piece of evidence for the resurrection is the fact that skeptics converted to Christianity after claiming to have met the risen Christ.
Yes, people get convinced of things. Just because somebody is convinced of something, even if they were previously against that belief, for example, doesn't mean that belief is true. Just because you've switched your belief doesn't automatically prove that it's valid now.
Paul's persecution of the first Christians and his dramatic conversion is well documented in Acts and his letters, as well as by writers such as Clement of Rome, Polycarp, Tertullian and others. He went on to suffer and die for his faith. Likewise, we know that James, the brother of Jesus, was a skeptic of Christ's ministry, but he went on to become a witness to the resurrection, leader of the Jerusalem church, and was also put to death for his beliefs. Now, what kind of momentous event could have changed the minds of these skeptics and even made them willing to go to their deaths for it?
Millions of people throughout history have died for what they believe, taking contradictory positions, so both of them can't be right. Just because you die for something doesn't mean that it's true. This is like second grade logic. I don't know how somebody like this can make it through the day without just being duped all the time.
So you believe in God, but is it the right one? Great question. After all, lots of people, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, claim they have the truth. What makes me think the God of the Bible is the true one? Wouldn't I have to try out every single religion to know I've got the right God? No. Think of it like this. I've got a set of keys that all look pretty similar, and when I get to my door, I sometimes try a few in the lock before I find the one that opens it. But once I've found the right one, I don't go on and try all of the others as well. It's like that with Christianity.
Okay, this one is terrible. He's not actually saying anything in this video. I mean, let's really look at it. He's saying, first of all this is like metaphors. You have the key, you have the lock. Christianity opens the door. Boom, you don't need to check for other keys. But let's really analyze what he means by opening the door. All he means there is that he's convinced that it's true. So all he's saying is that once I'm convinced that something is true, I don't need to look at any other, changes or any other potential explanations for the world that we live in. Also, again, we have another issue where it's like, I know you don't take this principle. I know you're not consistent in your life with this principle, because if you were, you would have the same beliefs that you did when you were 10 years old, which low key, he kind of does. Okay, but in all seriousness, if you never change your beliefs, if you've found something that confirms your worldview, and it's like, okay, this makes sense of reality, and then that was it, right? That's not something to be proud of. That's not something to flex, and which he does a lot at the end of a lot of his videos. That's a different thing. But the point is, our worldviews, our perspectives should be changing, and you shouldn't have one key that opens it and now boom, you're done forever. You never have to think again. That's ridiculous. And so I think that this guy is, more destructive than it seems. Just looking at it from this perspective, it doesn't seem like it's all that bad. But when you really consider it, a lot of you probably know who he is. He's interviewed hundreds of atheists, hundreds of Christians, tons of very good guests. And what's dangerous about him, I think, in my opinion, is that he has heard all these arguments. He knows the rebuttals to everything that he has mentioned, but he refuses to even acknowledge that exists. And he continues to peddle this information that's just blatantly false, even though I know that he knows better. I think there's a few reasons for that. One, he's in a niche, right? He's making content. This is how he makes money. So he has to believe in a certain thing because that's his identity. That's who he is. He's also a pastor, I'm pretty sure. And so he's getting literally paid to be a believer. And so it's like, going to ask for advice on buying a car from a car salesman, right? He's going to give you a certain perspective, and it might be valuable kind of in certain ways, but he has motives. And it's the same with this guy. Lastly, he really holds on this brand, and it's at the end of the videos. I don't even want to show it, but he has an audiobook, or I think it's just a regular book. It's also an audiobook. Maybe I'll look into it. I don't know if I can even get through it and read it, but he brags that, he has interviewed hundreds of atheists, but he's still a Christian. And I don't think that's something that he should be that proud of. If I were to interview hundreds of Christians, for example, my worldview, my perspectives would change. Not meaning that I would become a Christian all of a sudden, but I would have, a different perspective. He presents it in a way where it's like, oh, his faith is just unwavering. But it's important to recognize there's a line between just delusion and like true belief in something and being convinced with evidence. And I think that this guy is really straddling that line. I mentioned previously that I want to touch on why this content I think is so popular on like TikTok or Instagram or whatever. I think it's because it fits so perfectly into that like 60-second time frame. It's taken me a pretty long response video to break down everything that he said, and yet he can throw out all these claims that are really unfounded in the course of 60 seconds. Some of these videos are crazy where he will chuck out, like 10 claims and over the course of 30 seconds that are all, at least contentious, that need to be talked and discussed a little deeper. And if you're just mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, it's easy to just see that and be like, oh, wow, he has a point, and move on. And so in a way, I think that the gospel message is very suitable for something like Instagram, which is unfortunate because it can get to a lot of people and kind of dupe people. But yeah, that's all I have for today. I enjoyed this video a lot. I enjoyed filming it and like gathering the information for it. I hope you do as well. And if you do enjoy the video, please let me know down in the comment section below, and maybe I'll look at some other TikToks, reels. And you can recommend some content for me down there. And also, I do want to mention, if you want me to read his book, I will. I will for the content. If you really want me to roast his book, I can do that. So it's in your hands. But I'll see you on the next one. Let's go.
Citrus music.